This is Lament with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. Today I'm going to be taking a look at some Halloween elements, doing some game prep or creating content, depending on what my mood is. I really didn't have a specific plan, but I just wanted to let you know that we're the Fantasy Grounds Academy. We are just a community. We are not directly affiliated with the Smiteworks Fantasy Grounds software, although we are enthusiasts and individuals who like to use the platform to play online or in person with our friends. And we also provide a free service where we help people learn how to use the platform if needed. Hopefully, we can inspire you to do your own thing. And of course, we try to do creative endeavors such as creating content. Sometimes we use AI. Other times we'll just use, stuff off the shelf and show little demos and such. So essentially, wanted to say Halloween's coming up. Let's see, this is the 19th today, as of October 19th, 2025. And what I'm hoping to do is maybe inspire you to start working on your campaign, or maybe even just use this as a template for kind of setting up and working in Fantasy Grounds. So there's a couple different ways to approach this. You can either create your own content, which I think is more rewarding, but it takes a lot more time. And with the Halloween holiday coming up, if you wanted to play around Halloween, it might be a little late to do so. Also, you can just kind of run a one shot based off of your experience level and what your comfort level is. It doesn't always have to be Dungeons and Dragons, although that's what I'll be showing today. It could be Call of Cthulhu, Alien. The Fantasy Grounds 5e rule set has like the House of Lament. It has the kind of like the intro adventure for Curse of Strahd, which is the Death House, which a lot of people are familiar with and have ran, and there's a lot of resources for that. Um, Not to mention that there's a ton of really cool assets out there if you really look. So if you look for, um, like for instance, DM Andy, he puts out some pretty good Curse of Strahd content. He also does other settings, but that seems to be his main claim to fame is the you know, Ravenloft, Curse of Strahd type stuff. He does a really cool maps and props for that. And so there's a ton of materials out there for published adventures, and those are kind of what gives you your start, right? That's kind of like your foundation if you want, and then you can add whatever you want to it. But I think today I want to do a little bit more creative endeavors. But there again, it just depends on what you have access to and also how much time you have and patience and such. So kind of depends, but let's start a new campaign. So generally speaking, when you use Fantasy Grounds, you kind of want to get into a flow or a rhythm, which may take a few months or maybe just a week, depending on how much time you can put into it. And really the most valuable thing is time. And I think that a lot of people go into it excited, and once they realize it takes a little bit of time and work, they kind of get turned off. So you might be better off just running like a Halloween one shot, or depending on your group, maybe you're doing an ongoing campaign. So it just kind of depends. So what I'm going to do now is, let's see, I got to get my little pointer app here. This way I kind of show you what I'm pointing at. And basically, depending on what you're going to do, you can create a campaign just to run like a pre-made adventure that you're going to run for the Halloween holiday or for the rest of the year, whatever. And also, you can create like a work campaign, which is basically where you're going to do a lot of your effort, your actual work. And the reason you do this, so you kind of don't get painted into a corner, because a lot of times when you're first start running an adventure, you start making all this content, and then you realize, halfway through that you would like to use this stuff elsewhere, and that's where things get a little bit more difficult. So, as a avid user of Fantasy Grounds and a fan of role-playing games themselves, for tabletop RPGs, that process depends on the content, how familiar you are with editing tools like text editing and photo manipulation and your creative juices and such. So we'll start with we're going to create a campaign. Now this campaign would be for just the work that I want to do. So this is not where I would host players. This would essentially be a space where I can test things out. I can build things. If I want to export them, I can, so I can load those as a module in other campaigns or other sessions. So I'm going to create a campaign depending on the rule set you're going to be using. It could be Pathfinder, like I said, Call of Cthulhu, Shadow Dark. Shadow of the Demon Lord would actually be cool for Halloween. Vaesen, the Nordic horror role playing, is another one. And there's other, in World of Darkness, a vampire. I mean, you got tons of different genres and different places where you can actually run one shots for like a Halloween occasion or perhaps for the month of October. So I'm going to actually use 5e because that's what I'm most familiar with. Although I do have the Alien rule set, I do have Pathfinder, Fallout, but I don't have necessarily all these other ones. I do have Shadow of the Demon Lord, which I think is a pretty cool rule set. I do have Vaesen. I do have Shadow Dark. So I do have a lot actually, but in this case, I'm going to use 5e because that has the most content. I'm the most familiar with it, and I think most of the fan base is familiar with some 5e elements. So what I would call this is I'm going to say 5e for the title, and then I'm going to say Halloween content _ work. So whenever I put this work in here, I'll know that that campaign folder is not for play. It's mainly just for creating content. And then if you're gonna, I don't need to worry about password or hosting anyone, so I'm just gonna put it on LAN. But if you're gonna host online, you should probably go on cloud unless you do a direct connect with port forwarding and all that sort of thing. But so I'm gonna leave that alone. And I don't really need any sort of extensions or props, especially in a work campaign, unless you're specifically designing your own extension or you want that specific look. So I'm not going to load any extensions. This is just a working folder or working campaign. So I'm going to go ahead and hit start. And as that's loading, just to let you know, we do have a Patreon. We do have donations and stuff if you guys are so inclined. I don't normally advertise it because I feel kind of cheesy about that, but we do use the money to pay for our website. Also, occasionally I'll buy books and such when it's necessary for Fantasy Grounds. And then, of course, we have, the upkeep for our subscriptions, such as the like I pay for the use of a multi-stream for Streamlabs and that sort of thing. So that's basically where our donation money goes. So we have Patreon, we have all those sort of things, and those will be included in the Facebook, or excuse me, in the YouTube video description at the end. All right, so this is your general setup here. This is what you would normally come across when you first start Fantasy Grounds. You'll get this pop-up in a lot of cases for your campaign setup. So this really kind of depends on your preferences, but this little blue square here, this button, if you click that, the next time you log into this server or into this specific session, this won't pop up again. So this is just kind of a setup thing. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. Now, depending on what you're going to do and how you're going to build your content will determine which type of materials you want to load. So in this case, if I'm going to do all SRD stuff like homebrew, that sort of thing, all I probably need is the 2024, basically the SRD. I don't have that option here, but I can load it through modules. So I can load the 2024 core rules, but I don't even need that. I just need the real basics. So I'm going to type, I'm in the module activation. You type SRD, and here are the different ones. So there's a legacy, and then there's the newer one, the 5.2.1. So there's the bestiary, which is your monsters. A lot of them don't have artwork or they won't have anything fancy like that. There's some magic items so that you have kind of a base for building those. And then the player data in case you want to build stuff that's player facing, such as new archetypes, new classes, that sort of thing. So I'll go ahead and hit load. So that would be my basics that I would have loaded for Fantasy Grounds if I'm creating content. As far as everything else goes, I don't really have to change much of this desktop. This is really not a play space. However, if you want that kind of the immersion, you kind of want that mood, you can go ahead and change things around. such as the dice. Maybe I want more of a horror themed dice because I'm doing Halloween game prep. So if I come up to dice, I actually own most, if not all, of the dice skins, but you can use the default ones here. Like the throwback dice is supposed to be kind of a nod to the older box sets. And then your default is just ones that you can recolor yourself. So if you wanted to make this like a pumpkin color, you could. So if I go to body, I can click on this orange here and kind of make those orange, and then maybe make the actual text black. So if I come down here and just do that, hit OK, now you have this. So there's your basics if you don't own any of the dice. But if you do have dice skins, you have a whole bunch of different options. And I think some of the monster dice or maybe the blood dice would be cool for Halloween. So maybe something like this, or okay, here we go. Here's a black and orange with like claws. And then this one's like a liquid, like blood splatter. And these are your effects. So I'm gonna pick one of those. So we got like it's kind of like this pumpkin color here with the with a blood splatter. So now when you roll the dice, you'll get that kind of effect. So if you need that for inspiration or kind of like mood, that might work. The other thing that I usually do is if I'm going to test maps later, I'm going to go ahead and put on a different color instead of black. So I'll go ahead and click yellow. So if I have like a character with a spell casting ring or a line that's being drawn for movement and such, then it will be yellow instead of black. So the players can also change this. This background decal, I usually don't like to have it unless it's something that goes with the theme or something I want to look at every time. But if you don't want a decal or you want to change that, I'm going to go ahead and click on background decal. And what you could do is if you have an art subscription, you can have something like this to kind of be inspirational. Like here's a really cool castle one. So maybe I'll leave that one, or you can use an empty one, which is basically blank. So I'll leave that up there. It kind of gives that kind of mood for Halloween. And then pretty much, I mean, if I want the dice tower on, so I can test hidden rolls and such, I can turn that on as well. So there's a way that you can turn that on. So desktop show dice tower. By default, it's off. So I'm going to turn that on. And then right click and unlock it. And I'll bring it closer to the dice. So when I want to use it, I'm not constantly going over to the other side of the screen. And that's pretty much all I need to change. If I was going to play, I'd probably change more of these options, but I really don't have to in this case because it's just a working campaign. So like for instance, the map diagonal distance, it's at default right now. But if you wanted to change it to where every other square counts as 10 feet, that's your 1.5 times diagonal movement. So things like that you can change for gameplay, but in this case, I really don't need to change anything. So I'm going to close that, close the campaign setup, or hit finish, and that kind of gets me to there. And then I'm going to go ahead and close the dice panel. So this is my workspace, and what I want to do is kind of get it set up to where the windows are going to be where I want them to be as far as location goes and where I want them to appear as I'm working. So that's kind of an important thing whether you're playing or not. And I'm going to bring up the combat tracker, which is where you can test your NPCs and your character sheets in case. And then unlock that and bring that over. And I usually do this every time for a new session. So this is a whole new session with hardly anything loaded other than in my library. If I go to modules, or you can go to books, this is the things I have loaded for this session. So I usually like to start with a theme. In this case, it's going to be kind of a Halloween theme. So one of the concepts I thought of would be kind of fun if you had a group of, 4 to 6 people and you let them roll a die, whether you do it in Discord or you do it in Fantasy Grounds or whatever, would determine the villain type that you would be facing for the big bad evil guy or girl or gal. So that might be kind of fun. So what I thought of is maybe like a vampire, a mummy, perhaps a white or a ghoul type thing, and then a werewolf, um, those sort of classic creatures, maybe creature from the Black Lagoon. So you could do something like that and create a whole like one shot around that. So you wouldn't really have to do a whole lot of work, and it would just be maybe three steps. Like you get your setup, you get your quest, you do a little bit of exploration and getting to this place where you're going to have the final confrontation. Maybe there's a guardian or a couple of minions, and then you get inside the lair of the boss. Maybe there's a couple traps or environmental hazards, and then you have the fight. So that should take you, between 3 to 4 hours in one session, and that's a pretty good, fun time for those that can't commit to a full campaign. And you might be able to break that up into 2 or 3 sessions if you have to. It could get kind of boring though if you have too many people playing. So if you have more than 6 players, when it goes to passing their turn and going in order, it could take a long time for the next person to get their turn. So you got to kind of be careful like how many people you have. I think 4 to 5 players is ideal for time and space. I think 4 is like perfect for time and pacing and for attendance. So the more people you have in your campaign, the more likely you're going to be missing at least one person per game. And that's just based off of my experience. I could be wrong about that, but there's generally a case where you have like 3 or 4 dedicated players, and then you have maybe 1 or 2 kind of here and there hit and miss kind of individuals. So you kind of want to be careful in you picking who's going to be playing in the game. But for a one shot, they should be able to make that. Um, so I don't really know how the rest of you get inspired to create something, but I thought of maybe doing something like the Thing, like an aberration type creature, maybe like a Chol that's been reskinned, like a weird aquatic creature that comes up and attacks people, or perhaps some kind of weird alien type creature, something different than your typical vampire or your typical undead, that sort of thing. Because those kind of tropes are classic. People are kind of familiar with it. But for myself as a GM, I do get burned out on those sort of things. So it really depends on what your mood and style is. But I like the whole Star Worm thing where this thing comes down from space and or it comes from another dimension, and the players have to confront it. This way, there's no context as to what the creature can do, really, unless you do it through role playing and through clues in the game. So if you know automatically, like you're going to fight a vampire, you kind of know how to stack the cards. So you might have like a paladin ready to go, So it kind of depends on the type of fun, because then it just comes down to dice rolls and luck, right? There's no mystery to it. You're just going in there and thumping on something, which isn't bad, but for me as a game master, I kind of get burned out on that. It doesn't seem surprising or fun. And if you guys have any ideas of a type of creature that you would like to see or make, let me know because I'm willing to do that live here, and to show you the process of it. So if there's like a specific monster, or perhaps we could use a classic monster too. Some people have used like robots and stuff, kind of like as a monster, kind of like a construct with some arcane stuff, almost like some of the Warforged type of player characters and NPCs. Or you can also do like an elemental kind of creature, like an ooze or like slime. So that's kind of reminds me of the Blob. And then you have the Mummy, where you could do like an Egyptian type thing, or perhaps like a Persian, Middle Eastern style campaign with horror elements in it. So it really depends on what your specific needs are and what your group was into. Of course, you have the Curse of Strahd where you can load that, and the nice thing about those is that they already have like the creatures built, the artwork's done, the maps are done, so you don't have to do a lot of prep work. But if you're going to go this homebrew route, you got quite a bit of work in front of you and behind you. So in my case, I would just probably create a simple map and create maybe 3 or 4 different NPCs, and then one of the NPCs would probably be a hazard. And I think that's one of the things that I wanted to show to kind of help you create a more easier way to run things. So let's just say our particular adventure was going to take place in a swamp. So what I would do is create an NPC stat block that has the hazards that are going to be presented in the game, and they don't necessarily have to come out or have to be used, but you have them in your tool bag so that if you come across that situation, you have it there. So let's start with that. I'm going to use ChatGPT because it's a lot quicker. You can build in Fantasy Grounds line by line, but it takes a long time. So if you use the 5e rule set, it has a character importer. Some of the other rule sets do have an NPC tool, like an import tool. I know Savage Worlds kind of has one, and there's maybe a couple others out there, but in this case, I'm going to go to world, or excuse me, campaign, which is where a lot of the campaign tools are. So if you haven't played Fantasy Grounds, your tools is kind of like your settings and the main pieces that you'll use for your campaign. Then you have your library where you access your content. You have a player tab, which is where you manage and players join and they select characters and build characters and that sort of thing. And then your campaign, of course, is just all your stuff that you use as a GM mostly. And then your world thing kind of gets into story, quests, and locations if it's supported in your rule set. And then this character part here is where you build characters. So those are your main sections here. But the main thing we're going to be paying attention to is the campaign. We don't really need we'll need library and campaign. So NPCs, I'm going to click on that. And normally when I create content, I'm going to create my own group. So in this case, I'm going to click the down arrow here, click this green add category, and I'm just going to make my own custom category. It usually defaults as group 1, group 2, that sort of thing. So I'm going to click on the edit list, which will allow me to edit this. And I'm just going to say Halloween one shot, just so I have a group. And that's what I'm going to title all the rest of them when I make content. So now that I have that, it kind of gives me separation between the stuff I have loaded and my own custom content. If you don't put it in a group or a category like that, it goes into uncategorized, which is okay in the beginning, but once you start making a lot of different content, then it gets kind of confusing. So now I'm going to get out of the edit mode, go to um, the selection and select that group. So now I have a blank section here or a group that I can filter, but also I can use this as my kind of like my starting point here. So if I go into import text, this is the importer. A couple things about this is that you do have to have the proper formatting for the rule set. So in this case, this is 5e. So down here you have an import mode. So I'm going to use the 2024 D&D core rules as the filter type. But if you use the 2022 Monsters of the Multiverse, that format is a little different, and it also has the legacy content. So if you are someone who's still using the regular 5e, that's the setting you want to use. If you're going to copy and paste monster stat blocks from D&D Beyond, there is a filter for that, and then the new 2024 rules has the D&D core rules. So what I want to do is go into an AI tool. So in this case, I'm using ChatGPT. So I might use this. And then I have these projects over here, and one of them happens to be Fantasy Grounds content. And what this is a bunch of content here so that people can use this for to kind of give your context for your projects. Without that, it kind of guesses and pulls stuff from wherever. But in this case, I have more files, templates, kind of like examples of the type of output that I would like to have resourced and put out. So what I'm going to do is we're going to create a horrific aberration And what we want to do with it is kind of get the vibe for it. So I want to say create a horrific aberration that is like the thing, but themed for a D&D 5e 2024 rule set and a swamp location. And I'll tell it this is for a one shot to last about 4 hours. So that's roughly what we want to scale this for. And we're giving it the context so it kind of knows. So I'm going to say create the premise. So we want to create a premise. We can make up our own too. We don't have to rely on ChatGPT for everything. But I kind of want this thing to be unique and different. I don't want it to have the exact same thing every time, like vampires and ghosts, and get kind of burned out. So create the premise and backstory for this horrific creature. So we want it to be kind of spooky. So we'll see what it comes up with. You don't have to agree with whatever it comes out with, but generally it has some pretty good. The Muck Mother, I kind of like it. Let's see. Premise: one shot, 4 hours, levels 5 through 7. So Bleakfen Meyer, I kind of like that name. Usually I don't like the names that AI gives you, but Bleakfen Meyer is really cool. The villagers of Moss Grove, which must be the town, have vanished without a trace. The swamp reeks of decay, and strange voices echo from the fog, whispering in the tones of the missing. When a hunter drags back a half-dissolved body that still breathes and speaks in two voices, panic grips the settlement. So that alone is already really scary. Adventurers are called to investigate the Muck Mother, an ancient aberrant organism that mimics life through absorption and imitation. That's pretty spooky. So that is a lot like the thing, if you think about it. Kind of like a John Carpenter's thing, not so much the new one, but I did like the new one. So long ago, a fallen star, there we go. So it already kind of knows what I want. So a fallen star struck the heart of the swamp, bearing a fragment of an otherworldly symbiote. Fed by rot, stagnant magic, and centuries of drowned corpses, the parasite evolved into a sentient mass, the Muck Mother. She began small, taking the shapes of frogs, then deer, then people. Each new quote unquote child carried fragments of stolen memories, voices, and faces. When threatened, the creature sheds its form, merging back into the swamp as one colossal hive mind organism. It desires nothing more than to become the swamp entirely, replacing all life with itself. So that's pretty spooky. It says the last druid of the fen tried to contain it with some stone circles and blessed waters. Now those wards have sunken beneath the mire. With the seal broken, the Muck Mother's children mimic men made of mud, bone, and reeds, and it walks again. So immediately I think of the gibbering mouther, if you guys have seen that, as maybe its true form or the biological form. And then also you could use a shambling mound. So if you didn't want to create the whole thing, you can use that, maybe a toned down version of a shambling mound. That would be kind of your equivalent, but I don't want to use those per se. But this has given me the stat block. So this is the 2025 5e format. So it knew to give me this layout and this actual verbiage and wording because I gave it an example in the project file. So I uploaded a template that has the proper wording and the proper formatting and layout. Otherwise, it's just going to do whatever. And sometimes even with that information, it'll do that again and again. It'll drive you nuts. So you kind of have to train it to give you the results that you want. And that's kind of what I've been fighting with since I started using an AI tool. It's getting a little better though, but it still occasionally will do whatever the heck it wants if it doesn't have content or context. So if it has no examples or anything, it's just going to give you whatever. And it'll look close, but these numbers won't be in the right spot. You'll be missing some periods. So, like for instance, for traits, this amorphous form, it actually has a period after it. Multi attack, period after it. So you have to have that and here's your recharge. It's consumed flesh. So I kind of like this. So this creature is, what is this? CR what creature? CR5. So that's perfect for a group of level 4 characters, maybe 4 to 5 players. That would be a perfect, probably scaling wise anyway, it would be okay. So now it has actions, and here's the background. So this is something I want to include in a lot of my monsters. I found that the older versions of a lot of rule sets, they used to give this information, like I think all the way up to, I think, third edition, and then they stopped doing this. I don't know why, but you have this background, the tactics, the habitat, the ecology, and then look, it even gave me optional adventure hooks that I can use for a rollable list or a rollable table. And then here's the uh, the outline and the epilogue for the adventure. So that's pretty cool. So that gives me a really good kind of foundation for this creature. So, and for the one shot. So what I'm going to do is take this Muck Mother spawn. I'm going to copy this text from here. Now, this is assuming that the text is correct. I won't know that exactly until I look it over, until I actually use it inside of Fantasy Grounds. But I'm going to go ahead and copy the content there and bring over this. And this is the import tool. So I'm going to hit Control V as in Victor. And if you right click, you get this cleanup text. All that does is it gets rid of the spacing and kind of gives you a preview of what this will look like. And then on the other side is where your information is. So you don't want to put the information or the extra stuff until you actually, you want to put it over here and not in this area because it'll confuse the parsing tool. So I want to grab the other text, which is all the information stuff, the role playing, and I'm going to go ahead and grab that, hit copy, and that's going to go on the right-hand side. So I'm going to type information. So this is the extra stuff for the DM, so they get a kind of a feel of the vibe of this creature. And then I'll just change the formatting. So this will be a header. This one I don't want. Yeah, there we go. So these will be bold so that they're kind of separated out. And there you go. So this is just kind of a way to make your game more interesting and also more unique. So you don't always have the same, vampires, and it gets old after a while, I think. I mean, I like vampires and Curse of Strahd and stuff, but it just seems like every year that's the same thing over and over. Oops. Control Z, Control Z. I'm messing up my formatting here. There we go. All right, so once you have all this in here and you have your import mode selected, if it's formatted correctly, it should parse correctly, and you'll be able to tell once I go ahead and hit import. So hit import, and what that does is it puts everything into a space where hopefully where it should go. And one of the ways you can tell is that you don't have any blank spots here. And sometimes if your ability scores aren't set up properly, like it is right here, it will kind of look weird and they'll all have the same number or it won't be right. So you'll be able to tell. So this is just a way to check this. So maybe we should give it a vulnerability, maybe to fire, because that'll be kind of like the thing. So we'll do fire. That way it's a little bit more balanced because it's got a lot of resistances like acid, necrotic, bludgeoning, piercing, slashing, from non-magical attacks. So if we give it a vulnerability of fire, I think that's a good balance, and it gives the players a chance to defeat it. And let's see. So it's got this amorphous form. So the traits basically have stuff that um, basically will let you, you know, be able to parse this and use this in your game. Let's see, a DC 16 wisdom check, insight check reveals subtle imperfections. The spawn has advantage on dexterity stealth checks made to hide in muddy or aquatic terrain. And then it has a multi-attack, so it makes 2 pseudopod attacks. Um, it has the melee attack is basically bludgeoning 2d8 plus 3, and then it plus an average of 7 acid damage. So it's pretty gnarly. That thing's pretty nasty. Consume flesh. So the spawn engulfs a dead or dying creature within 5 feet. After 1 minute, it absorbs the body, creating the creatures. See, this is messed up. So sometimes your formatting won't have the correct punctuation, and that's usually this apostrophe and quotes and hyphens and such. They don't always parse because it's not using an ISO character. And I tried to get ChatGPT to fix that, but it just wants to. It doesn't give you the correct punctuation, so you get this weird gibberish here. DC 15 investigation to notice the falseness, but basically when it consumes, it gains the voice of one random mannerism. So whatever it may have observed, which in most cases would be fighting, which sucks. So that means that it's gonna it's gonna battle, it's gonna mimic the fighting that it saw last, or someone hiding or something like that. Consume flesh. So here I had to fix the recharge because it had 5 with all this gibberish. So it's not using the correct ISO characters. That's why I had to fix that. When reduced to 0, the spawn bursts into muck. At the start of its next turn, 2 smaller mudlings use a gray ooze stats emerge from its remains. So I'm not going to use the gray ooze stats. I'm going to actually make the mudling. So I'll fix that. But just basically minor adjustments here. Instead of having to type everything out by hand, this gives you a really good start. So you're not having to struggle. It takes as much time. And then here's how the notes turned out. So that's really nice. And I'm going to say habitat. I'm going to say swamp. And then treasure. I don't think it really has any treasure. I mean, if it does, it's absorbed a few coins or maybe a weapon or something, but I'm not going to worry about it. It's not really a treasure carrying thing. It might be random. So maybe I'll make a little table for that. But this is the layout that you get if you use the import tool. Now, if you hand type this stuff in from scratch, it won't create this nice little summary down here. I don't know why, but it has something to do with the import. So this would be good to copy and paste this information into a description page in your adventure. So you could show this with the art all kind of embedded in the story entry. This nice formatting, you can just copy this information and paste it somewhere else. So that's kind of why I like this summary here. It looks really nice. So there we go. So that's the Muck Mother. This is the big bad evil. And what we might do is on the main tab here, this little thing up here, we can add a base description so we don't show this. So when we put it on the combat tracker, this information doesn't show. It will show this information down here, which will be like a base description. So let's go back to ChatGPT and let's see if we can get a, I'll say describe the creature in basic and quick terms in a short and basic terms. There we go. So we'll see what it gives us. And that's what I'm going to use for the description. So instead of saying, oh, it's the Muck Mother, it's a massive, shapeless aberration, devours living creatures. It's made of black, pulsing mud. So let's do this. So let's do just a quick 4-word description. Physical. because it tried to give me some of the horror stuff, which I like, but for the sake of the title, for like the replacement alternate title, oozing skeletal mud fused monstrosity. There we go. That's what I was looking for. So this is kind of what the base of what its appearance is going to be. So we'll do an image prompt for that later, but first let's get this in here. So this is going to be what is going to be shown when it's put on the combat tracker. And what we'll do is it's not identified, so until they know what this thing is, we'll leave it like that's what they'll see. So that's what the title will be. So maybe we'll shorten that a little bit. So mud. We'll just say oozing mud monstrosity. Because I don't want that description to be like 50 miles long, because that's what's going to go on the combat tracker. Oozing mud monstrosity, that's what it's going to say. And that way, when you put it on the combat tracker, this is what will come up first until they identify it. And then they go, oh, they'll give it a name. Maybe I'll change the name to fit whatever the players call it, because it is an aberration. It's not an actual living creature, so to speak. Okay, so that's the creature, right? Now we need a little bit of artwork. So this is where I think a lot of us get hung up on creating our own content is artwork. And that goes for maps, tokens, that sort of thing. So I do use AI for my personal games to build and to make stuff for myself for this type of situation. In most cases, I don't really need to, but in a lot of cases, I do because I don't want to spend hours looking for it online or waiting a year to get it built for just a one shot. This for by using a real artist. Now, if I was going to do a Kickstarter, what I'd probably do is do all the artwork with AI and then give that foundation to an artist and make that one of my stretch goals to get real art made for the campaign. Unfortunately, though, if you don't like the art that you're paying for, that might suck. But if you give an idea of what you're looking for and just kind of sell the adventure with the fake AI art and let people know, hey, this is AI art. I want to get real, published art, but I need the X amount of dollars or something before or something. I think that'd be a good way to do a Kickstarter, and not lie about the source, but then also say, look, if we want to use real artwork and support the artist, let's step up the campaign a little or something like that. That's how I would do it. All right, so this is a kind of a cool way to do this. Now, if you're going to do more NPCs, don't close this because you'll lose your settings essentially. But what you can do is wipe this stuff out and then use it again. So I'll just take this and put it down into the hotkeys. So I can. Is that going to work if I close it? I think I'll leave it open just in case. Okay, so there's the muck mother spawn, but I want to do the mudlings. So let's go back. And before we do the mudlings, I wanted to do the art. So what I want to do is say, create an image text prompt for the muck mother. We're going to say square orientation because it's going to be a big blobby looking thing probably. So that's what I want to do. And then we want transparent background because that gives us more flexibility. I like the background image, but I want to use it in different applications. So I want to strip out most of the background. So it's just going to do the text prompt. I'm not actually saying make the creature. I'm saying make the text to make the creature. So create an image text prompt for the muck mother. And I told it I want square orientation and a transparent background. So here's what it says. A grotesque swamp aberration formed of black glistening mud and tangled weeds, with fragments of bone and half-digested faces visible across its surface. Its shape constantly shifts, part humanoid, part ooze, with elongated, dripping limbs and tendrils writhing from its torso. I want to make sure I say pseudopod. So I want to, because that's part of its attack. So what I'll do is its shape constantly is elongated limbs with two pseudopods. And we'll say thin, smaller tendrils writhing from its torso. Pale eyes and mouths appear. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the gibbering or gibbering mouther. Style, AAA quality dark fantasy creature art, realistic textures, cinematic lighting, high contrast horror atmosphere. Composition, centered full body view, no background, soft edge. Lighting, no, I'm going to say full body view, square orientation, transparent background. You do have to make a few changes because it doesn't always know what you want. You kind of have to remember some of these details. Like the pseudopod attacks is one of the things it does. So I want to make sure that I put that in there. Well, we'll see how this turns out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it, instead of just saying this, I'm going to say generate a high quality hyper realistic image of, and then it's going to take the rest of that. So this is the actual prompting. So I got the text kind of figured out with doing it this way. So that way, when you do the prompt, it's a little bit better. Sometimes I don't word it properly and I forget like the best practices. So what I've done is I've given ChatGPT a template of the type of output I want. So this thing right here would be the template, or this up here. And then it would know from here on out that this is what I want to use. So we'll see how it turns out. Sometimes you get something cool, sometimes not. One of the things I do like is it's kind of random. So even though I've asked for certain things, you really don't know what you're going to get. You'll get a rough idea of what you're looking for, but it's going to translate it the way it wants based off the training, based off examples. I could give it an image to kind of give it a style and the color and the mood, but I kind of want to see what comes out. I'm more interested in the random luck of the draw thing as opposed to trying to force it into doing what you want. I've never been able to successfully make a AI tool do exactly what I want. So I kind of said forget it. I'm just going to go with it. So instead of fighting it, I'm going to just go with it, let it do its thing and then work around that instead of trying to force it to do everything else. So far I like what I see. It's not, this looks like an undead, so that will um, fool the clerics, I guess, paladins. So that's cool. All right, so that doesn't look too bad. So I'm going to download that. And what you can do with something like this for mood, like the big reveal, is I'm going to go to Grok, which is for for X. CX, and then here's Grok. So this is a paid version, by the way. And then what I want to do is, how do you do the images? I don't remember how to do maybe it's only the app. Um, Can do. I think maybe it's only the app does it. I don't know. I don't remember. But you can take something like this and you can create a video, a short little like 5-second video, and it's animated. So this is just giving me images. Yeah. So anyways, you can do that with different tools. So like Rock can do it. Let's see, edit. Yeah, I don't know how to do it with the just the website. I think I have to do it on my app for my phone. So anyways, I'll take this and I'll put it into a tool like this, and it'll take the image and I could do it with Sora too. So let me see if, but it leaves the watermarks, so I kind of don't like that. But Sora 2 can do it somewhat. Let's see. Uh, Sora 2, log in. Yeah, I don't even want to go down here. That's just too much. But anyways, so you can get really cool things by doing that if you want. But what I really like is the idea that this is already cut out. I don't have to do anything to it really. And I can save this image and I will just put muck mother underscore art or something like that. Or actually, I usually do a prefix. So art. Well, this isn't art. This is going to be the 2D thing. 2D underscore muck mother. So there we go. So there's that. Now I'm going to ask it to I'm going to make the muck mother's face. Say outside of the border. So silver border. Of the muck mother's face. Transparent outside of the border. Okay. Create a BTT pog. Okay, we'll see what it does. It usually does pretty good. Like if I need to, I can do this again and just give it another picture. So I'll just do that and just ask for the same thing. If it doesn't come out right, I can give it an example and do it again. I don't want to do that too many times, but once or twice isn't bad. But when you get past 3 times, then you obviously need to change the approach or change the source or reword it somehow because it'll frustrate you because it's really hard to control these things. You just have to kind of work with it. Kind of a 50 or actually probably a 60-40. You can control it up to about 40%, but then the rest of it is going to be luck and practice, I guess. So let's see what we got here. So this is going to be for the actual pog if we're going to use pogs. And this creature here, the full body image, I'll use that for the 3D part. So if you want to use this in the 3D model or the 2D mode, you can or 2.5D, you can use that for that too. And then just use this for the art also. Okay, so far I see the border. It's pretty pronounced. And see what the head looks like. It's trying. So I noticed that the Chat GPT art thing has slowed down, but it does a little bit better job than it used to. It used to be a lot quicker, but then what it would do is you wouldn't get at the accuracy. So now you're getting a little bit more accuracy for the time waited. So yeah, that looks pretty good. Yeah, so I might have asked it to create maybe swamp in the background, but I think that's pretty cool. And then what I can do is put this in another program and put my own background back there. So that's a lot of work though if you're going to be fiddling around with the art. But I just wanted to warn you that, it can be a little bit of extra work. So now I want to say is create the stat block for the muddling minions. Stat block muddling minions related to the muckmuck. So we'll see if it comes up with something good or something useful. So this is fun to do occasionally. You know, I just share the process with you guys. So maybe down the road, if you want to make something for yourselves, you know, you'll have some idea of where to start. I expect everyone to remember all this stuff. So yeah, so it's making the little muddling minions. What are they? Let's CR1 or something like that. No, CR quarter, perfect. So these are the little guys. And so these are what I think it can summon these things, something like that, or create them. So yeah, it's a lot less lethal. But if you get like 4 of them, that can be just as lethal, you know, depending on how many players you have. So let's go back to Fantasy Grounds, and I'll do the same thing I did last time. Is I'll right click, clean up text. I want to look for those weird text things, that the apostrophe and the hyphen. Did I see any that? Yeah, so like this hyphen is not exactly the same. Yeah, the other one was a little bit more like the apostrophe S. Those are the weirdness that happens with conversion. So if you copy and paste from like a PDF, you'll get stuff like that too, because not everyone uses a standard text keyboard. They'll have from other languages and accents and stuff. So those don't compute when it comes to um, using the parsing tools. All right, so here's the background. I will make these bold, and we'll see what it turns out like. Yep, goes. So it turned out pretty good. So there's the muddling. And again, I'd probably just put oozing, we'll say small, I'll just say oozing mud creature. And unidentify it. So that's what it would look like, combat tracker, or they identify it. I'll make these vulnerable to fire too. And pretty good. Okay, so there's that. So beside the AI stuff and the art, this doesn't take very long. I mean, if I already had all those things prompted and all the artwork done, then I would do this after the fact. So that way I'm not going back and forth. That's where you lose a lot of time. So it would do a majority of the NPCs, a majority of the images, and then get those all prepped, and then do the import of the text, associate the art with the pictures back here, you know, the full body, the token camera, and then the flat pog. So that's how I would handle that. So you're not spending as much time on it. That's where you lose a lot of time. And then I think what I want to do is take that. I'm going to look back, go back, and should probably copy and paste this stuff as you go, because as you can see, I'm having to scroll back a whole bunch. So it'd be ideal if I would do this as it generates instead of going back and backtracking. But this is the rollable list, which is basically another way of saying table. I just say rollable list because I don't want to say table, because it'll format as a table, and I don't want it that way. So again, this is a core function in Fantasy Grounds. This is not exclusive to 5e. So if you go to tables, again, I'm going to make my own group. So this is going to be, let's see, it's going to be Halloween one shot as before. And then import text. So the name of the table is going to be adventure hook options. And then going back to the information here, this would be what this is the title, Whispers Beneath the Mire. So this would go if you have if you need to, you go back in here, and when you're done with this, you can essentially you can use this as like a descriptive text, or like for the story and for the immersion and such. But I want to go back to Fantasy Grounds, and I'm going to paste the data in there. And you see you have this pipe separator. And then what I would do is I would say like D6 up on top for the header with the pipe separator, which is this line here. And then I would say hook. And then what we're going to do is data type. We're going to unclick simple, and we're going to go, well, to go to delimited. These columns will be separated by a pipe instead of a comma or a colon or a semicolon. We don't want to use those column headers in the first row. So this is the header up here. So yes. And then table ranges in the first column on the left here, which is this number. So yes. And then import. So that's basically creates a table rather quicker than trying to do it one at a time. This wouldn't be bad to copy and paste, but if you've got like, 20, 100 results, that's where that import table. If you've only got like one table with 4 results, you don't have to go through all this, but if you're going to do multiple tables with different amounts of variation of results, you're probably going to use the import tool. So this is the description part I was telling you about. So when I go back here, Whispers Beneath the Mire. So that would go in there. Go. So now you could lock it and you can test it, see what it does, make sure it's rolling properly. So there's a 2. So local cattle vanish, leaving only bubbles and ripples in the mud. So that's an adventure hook. See this one, number 5. Crops and frogs begin to sing in unison under the full moon. Crops? So how weird, like plants? That's kind of weird. And then the water tastes like metal and reflections in it blink on their own. How creepy. So those are just little elements that the adventure gave me. And then what I'll do is the outline and such. I'll probably just use like a story entry at first to kind of get everything organized. So again, I will create another category. And then this time I'm going to put, again, one or Halloween one shot. See, you're not going to know exactly how many of these you're going to need when it comes to doing this. So I just do them as I go, but you could technically go in there and do it for everything. That way you don't have to keep switching back and forth. You just copy and paste it into all these different data types. But in this case, I'm going to use an advanced story record, and I'm going to say outline. And then I just want a text block for now and go in and take the outline that it gave us. So this is the premise or the workflow for it. So that will be this just for, and then see how it's all separated out. You can go right click, clean up text, and that gets rid of the extra spaces. And then you could take this. This would be italicized, and this would probably be a bold or like a header. And then your read aloud would be this. So then you could highlight it and hit, in this case, Control 4. And then, oops, Control Z. I think it's Control 3. Yeah, there we go. And then Control Tab would be the DM speaking, basically. So now when you click this, it goes into the chat like this. And then what we can do is highlight this, and then do is make this bold, or actually this would be a header. This would be a header. A corpse half absorbed into a tree warns she remembers us. Environmental hazard. Deck save. I usually bold these so these pop out so they know about these checks that are coming up. Epilogue, so that's 2. And then read aloud, another one. So we would do Control 3 and then Control Tab, and we'd put the DM speaking there. Final encounter with a muck mother core. Spawn stats, double hit points, add legendary resistance 2 per day. Players may reseal. I'll say optional. So I don't think I would throw that at them for a one shot. This would be an optional final encounter. So we won't. This is optional. I don't see that. Just make it last longer. All that would do. So you just kind of get an idea. So maybe for this we would put an image, so we can use that as a handout. So what we could do is take this information and copy it. For a horrific doubt for our showing, depicting so we're going to show this thing as it's like a warning. So I'll show this to the players during that. So create an image text pro. Okay, so we do that as kind of like just an immersion tool, right? You're just going to show this picture when they encounter this thing that warns them. Corpse in tree handout. A haunting, hyper-realistic, dark fantasy illustration of it. Yeah, okay, so let's do that. So generate a full body image. Square orientation. Of okay, so we'll see what this comes out like. Now this one I don't necessarily want it transparent, but maybe I do. I don't know, but maybe I want the swamp background because this is going to be artwork that we're picking out. But I wish I can get the video thing to work and show you guys that. I'd have to do it on my phone, but that would be really slick. Like it just would add to the if you could share that image, it'd be animated. And it would kind of be a little bit more spooky because you can put the rain and the wind and just having a little short little video loop. I wouldn't do too many of those, but once in a while for that impact, the grave warning, it's just really super spooky. And this is like just running off the minimum here. I mean, it's taken me about an hour to explain it, but if I was doing this alone and I wasn't doing any streaming and yapping the whole time, I'd probably knock this out in a couple hours and be ready to play with artwork and everything to go with it. But that's kind of based off of practice and what I have access to. And, I got paid versions and, that sort of thing. But you get to this point where there's less barriers, it makes it easier to do. So yeah, that looks pretty god awful. So yeah, that would be really cool to animate. So I could use this later and put a different background on it. So I'm gonna say create a haunting and dim background or swampy. Swampy and horrific landscape. So use the same art styles as above. So I might use that as my base. So instead of having a different background for every single piece of art, I can just use the same one. And since it'll be probably longer in like vertical or horizontal, excuse me, horizontal, then I can shift it. So I could use the same art, but just use 1/3 of it, something like that. So I would use Canva for that and then use it to piece together. Let's see. Let's go to create. Want to do desktop wallpaper. Close that. And then we'll wait for this to generate. But while that's doing that, I can I can copy this image and then put that in here. And then go up to the next image, which I believe was the token. So I'll just get all the artwork together in Canva and then use Canva to edit and to rearrange it and stuff. So this will just get it into the software or into the tool. And then I'll just separate it out later. So there's that. And now back to our background, whatever that is. Yeah, so this is going to look pretty good. So I'll be able to use this in all the different aspects of it. So give that a thumbs up. So that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. So do the same thing. So this will be my kind of like a starting point, right? And then take some of these creatures, like maybe this one. I got to bring it up to the front. Forward, forward, forward. Okay, so something like this. And then I would just go like that and use that for the background. So if you wanted to do something similar, you do something like that. And then maybe even make it a little bit transparent so it kind of blends in a little bit more. So this way, I'm only going to make it like just like 85%, but it kind of helps feather it in to the background image so it doesn't look so like separate. Unless you want it to have like a glow, then you can add some kind of effect to it or something. So maybe you want to see edit. You could probably put a green glow, or you could change the color of it. Here's some shadow. So maybe you would add a little bit of a drop shadow to it. Kind of give it that more dimension, I guess, more like 3D looking. So there's a little bit of shadow in there. Something like that. Or you could do a glow, like have like a green glow around it if you wanted to. Let's see. Something like that. And then just turn it down. It's not too, there we go. And then turn down the intensity. So you can do all kinds of cool stuff with these if you got the right tools and practice. So now you got like this piece of artwork and this thing croaks. It kind of sounds like gurgly kind of croaking sound. So you can do all kinds of stuff. It just depends on what you're doing. But this would really make for a fun handout. And then this thing here, you can make another instance and use that for the background for this, but favor this side more if you want. Let's see, let's do that. So let's position this guy to the front. And what we could do is put him in the background. Maybe like this, and then go backward, something like that. So now you got this thing incorporated into the image as well. Or you can go something like that, like it's just starting to arrive or something. So you could do a lot of cool stuff. It just depends on, how much you want to do. So I would do stuff like this for like a handout. Maybe just make one or two, right? So one shot, so you don't have to do a bunch of it. And now I want to say create this is something I kind of glossed over, but create a combined NPC stat block for all of the swamp hazards in a single stat block with features and actions. All the ability scores are 10 and generic. We'll see if it does it. So this is a combined thing with traps and hazards. Before, I used to have them all separated out. Like I wanted them to be separate for every single thing. But now that when you run something, you kind of want it easier for you. So when you're running a game, you don't want 50 stat blocks, right? It's nice if you just have this one combined thing here. So this is all the different, there's quagmire terrain, clinging mire, toxic miasma, lurking leeches, slippery roots. And then for actions, there's a spore burst, a sudden suck for like hazards, lash out, grasping vines, mud tendrils. So this gives you kind of a starting point for introducing hazards without having like 8 different stat blocks. So that makes it a little simpler when you're running the game. That's what I want. I want simplicity. I don't want complexity as much as possible. There's already enough work as it is. I don't need more work. So NPCs. So this will be like again, I'm just hit Control A and delete everything. I didn't close it. I just minimized it. And clean up the text. So here's the swamp hazards. And then I don't need the background stuff here. And I'll go back to ChatGPT and grab this background stuff here. Put that into Fantasy Grounds. Up text. So bold on these. And let me make sure, do I have any of those weird? I guess I'll find out. So import, there we go. So the beauty of this is when you have it on a map, like pinned to a map, it doesn't even have to be on the combat tracker, because once you have it parsed like this, if there's anything on here that's, oh, here's the hyphen. I knew that was going to be messed up. So let me fix that. Okay, 5 through 6. Okay, so like here's a saving throw, right? You can drag and drop that into the dice or into the combat tracker onto the victims. So anything that has saves or damage, it's right there. You can just drag and drop it onto the victim. So that makes it easier. So now you only have one stat block to pull from, and you just grab the correct thing, and then you just hyperlink this down here. So whenever you need this during gameplay, you expand this out, have it right here, and then when it comes time to running your campaign or running the game, you can just pop that up and drag and drop it onto the targets. And that makes it so much easier than having like 60 different NPCs and having encounters and all this stuff. That it just makes it more, more difficult or more time consuming. So that's something that you'll learn over time. That's not something that's inherent with any virtual tabletop. You're gonna have to figure it out. And that's really what it comes down to is, making it easier on yourself. And, there's lots of little shortcuts and such. And I kind of go over some of that, as I do the videos, but I can't I can't think of everything, there's so many ifs, ands, and buts and situational things. But yeah, so there's the swamp hazards all in one combined stat block. And if you want to, you can make little images for it or, or have like tokens so you can place them on the map so that you kind of have an idea where they're at exactly. Use tokens instead of an image on a map. So that way you can move them around. So there's your NPC stat blocks. Now I might make a couple more, like I'd probably just use some generic ones for like alligators and that sort of thing, unless they're tainted, like they've been corrupted by this thing, then I would probably make a separate stat block, but maybe I'd have to make a couple like crocodiles or something like that. But really that's a majority of it. And then of course we'd have a map. So I do recommend using an actual bona fide swamp map that was created by a person doing, that makes maps, like a cartographer. There's plenty of that out there. Um, the the existing way that ChatGPT and other AI tools work, they don't do a very good job. I'll try. So I'll say create a top-down map drone view of a swampy landscape with dark pools of water, mud, and I'll say create an image prompt because I don't want to do the images yet. Say twisted trees. Square orientation. That seems to be the easiest to deal with for maps when it comes to generating them. Full. Okay. Oh, I'll say no. I don't want any square, so no grid. Because if you put a grid on there, it's never perfectly square, and then when you go to put it in Fantasy Grounds, it's just going to irritate you because it's not going to be square. It'll be like weird off. They're not even going to look right. Okay, so we'll do this. Say generate a high quality we'll see. I don't always get good results. So technically, I mean, I have enough content like from Chris and Zovia and all the other artists out there that Angela maps. I mean, there's so many good maps out there that I don't normally have to resort to ChatGPT unless it's something very specific, then you might. But I don't mind doing like the art or the image generation, but when it comes to maps, I'm pretty picky about it. And if it's not scaled properly, it's not going to be right. I should have wrote something about the scaling on it because it will create it, but you don't know the distance. Like, is it zoomed in or is it way out? And it kind of messes with you. But what you want to do is figure out how many pixels or squares per map. So I'll do the math here in a sec, but I want to show, I think 60 was like the golden number for if you want a lot of squares and a lot of area, that might be a thing. So I don't know, this already doesn't look right. It looks 3D-ish, but I do like the image. But this is kind of more like an immersive kind of narrative kind of look, although you could use it. I mean, it's not going to hurt. But so for what I want to do is divide 1024, because that's the dimensions of the map, by equal. See, that looks more like a smaller map. So equal number of pixels per square inch for a map. So what we're going to do is we're going to have this help us. I've already done this before to kind of know what the answer is, but I wanted to show. So pixels per square inch. Calculate. So this image here is 1024 by 1024. So that's the dimensions. What you want to do is divide this thing up evenly and by square. So we probably want what, 15, maybe 10 squares across at the most. So what we'll see is what it's going to give us. So anywhere between, we have this image, it's perfect square. We want to divide it to 1-inch squares, map, so 50, 70. So these are the uneven numbers. So what we want to do is go with something that's going to actually calculate. So let's say that's close. So I think it's 60. So let's make or keep the squares more even, because these are fractions, and that's when it starts getting off a little bit. So if you use a number like 60 for a 1024 by 1024 image, it's going to be more even. So that's 14 by 14 at 70. So if we do 60, it's probably going to be like 16 by 16 or 12 by 12. So let's use 60. So no, that's not going to. I'll say what? There has to be some kind of, middle ground there, because like that's 85. That's too much. I don't want 17 squares. So we want it divided cleanly. So it doesn't have to be, so there's 60s, not, it gives you the idea. But that's how you can calculate like the size. So here we go. So 64 would give us the correct number, or you can do 128, which would be a 8 by 8 grid. So it kind of depends on this, but I think this image would work well with just that. So when you put this in the fantasy grounds, it should be more even. So we're going to use 64, and that's going to be 16 squares across. So that's how you can help keep the maps more evenly. If it doesn't have doesn't already have a grid on it, and the dimension, overall dimension, you can do the math and figure out a good way to parcel it out so it's not. So I'm going to do that now. We'll just take this and we'll add an image here. So we'll go to images. Nope, not images. Assets first. Click on images, then click folder. And then I'll see if I can put that map in here. So going to, we want to take this image here if we're going to use this. I think I would just use a real map. This would work though. Copy, and we're going to put it in here. So I actually got to go to the downloads folder and grab the download from it. So that is, oops, save image as, we'll just say swamp map. And I'd probably put this in Canva too, just in case. And we're going to say map underscore swamp map. Okay, so there's that. So take this, cut, and we're going to paste it into the Fantasy Grounds directory on the back end of it. So I want to go to Fantasy Grounds, images, folder. It will pop up the backend folder. So there's this, I'll just say map underscore swamp. I think that's what it is. And then want to hit this refresh. There we go. So there's the image. It's not added to the campaign yet, but it's part of the assets. So what we're going to do is go to images. And again, I'm going to create another thing here. This is going to be the Halloween one shot. And then what I'll do is I'll take this and we'll create a map record with it. So quick map, no. We want to create a map record. So, and now it's part of the campaign, right? So now we're going to test our theory here. So we want to put a grid on it that's 64 pixels per inch. So we got a grid. We're going to set this to 64. It's wrong number. 64. So yeah, that's even. So it's even right there. It's evenly square. And then I'm going to change it to like a yellow color so we can see it a little better. And then I'm going to fade it out so it's not so aggressive. There we go. So there's our battle map, right? And what I was saying earlier is if you were going to travel through here, you can take like this swamp hazards and link it to wherever you need it on the map. And then later on, when you come to that portion, just going to click on that link and it's going to bring up your, it'll bring up your pin there so you can bring that up in combat. Now let's put the creatures on the combat tracker, see if those work. So that's how you test them. So we're going to go to Muck Mother and the Mudling, and we'll put them on the map. So drag this token, even though it's not fancy, but there's the mud creature, and here are the Mudlings. So that didn't turn out too well because those have the same initial, but I could fix that. I mean, wouldn't have to use a different token, you know, that sort of thing. But basically, they look like they're working. And then we're going to reveal them. And I don't remember if they have dark vision or not, probably. Let's turn on the line of sight here because there won't really be much. I might put like some glass around the base of these trees, but that's about it. I'm not going to put many walls or anything because it's kind of open swamp area. So if I go to here, drop down, put the navigation arrow on, that way you can move the map around. And then take and if you turn on line of sight, enable. Yeah, so this is their dark vision, basically, where they can see. All right, so looks like it's working. The muddling. Oh, this is the muck mother. It has a further, more distant view than the little muddlings. All right, so there you go. So there's your monsters. You got a hazard on here that you can pop up, and see, all you do is you just drop in whatever. So this is a DC strength, that doesn't count. Lurking leeches, let's say they come across some leeches. So the leeches roll a d6. On a 5 or 6, a leech attaches to the creature, dealing 2 or 1d4 necrotic damage per round until removed. So it has to make a strength check to remove. Or a dexterity saving throw. Let's say there's some slippery rope. So we put this on the muddling, and it failed. So it would slip and fall or something like that. Fall prone. So then you would just take the effects here and drag and drop the prone effect onto the muddling if it fell. So now there's a prone effect on the muddling. Why didn't it show in the combat tracker? How weird. Maybe because I don't have the round set. And I'm going to take prone. Should drag and drop onto this. It says it's on here, but it's not showing in on the record. That's weird. Oh well. But nonetheless, it's got the prone condition. Let's see if that's true. So let's have it attack the other thing just to see if it. Yeah. Anyways, that's how you test this out. Let's try grappled. See, grappled went on there. I don't know why prone doesn't show. Really weird. And if it's even supposed to, I don't remember. But anyway, so that's kind of what I would do for like a one shot. And it's already almost done, right? All I got to do is flesh it out a little bit more. I got enough of an outline to run it and enough content to kind of make it fun for a few hours. So, it doesn't have to be super, fleshed out. You can have most of it done. And it's kind of like homebrew anyway, so you're not really going to have to worry. And with the token artwork and stuff on there, it's going to look really good. And you got this mood stuff going on. Like I said, I had that video of that. I'll have a video of that creature writhing, or have a video of that guy or that creature that's embedded in the tree, all messed up. I'll share that image just to freak them out, And then if you have sound, you can always add that stuff too. So anyways, this is pretty much kind of just a workflow and hopefully some kind of, inspiration. You can actually add this kind of stuff to existing content. So if you have like Curse of Strahd or Call of Cthulhu or whatever, you can add your own stuff to it. So that way it's more unique, a little less predictable, and players are like, hey, this isn't supposed to happen. Well, no, this is my game, not Wizard of the Coast or whoever the author is. Anyways, you guys take care. Have a good rest of your week. Happy early Halloween if I don't catch you then. I'll probably do a show maybe Friday night. I don't know because it'll already be Halloween on Friday. So it's in a couple weeks. So we'll see. Maybe I'll do one more game prep with like Curse of Strahd or something next week. That way people, if they're going to run something that's already built. There's also the Dollhouse. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it's for different rule sets. So that's an interesting game. That's pretty much classic by now, though. It's a DM's Guild product, I believe. But anyhow, folks, you guys take